Right now, as you're watching this, there are over 2,000 corporate servers sitting on the public internet with an unpatched vulnerability that scores a 9.1 out of 10 on the severity scale. Attackers have been exploiting it since at least March 31st, and yesterday, CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, added it to their known exploited vulnerabilities catalog with an emergency deadline. Every federal agency in the United States must patch this by April 9th. That's 2 days from now. The vulnerability is CVE 2D2635616. It's a pre-authentication API bypass in Fortinet's FortiClient Enterprise Management Server, the software that thousands of companies use to manage endpoint security across their entire workforce. And the word pre-authentication is doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence. It means the attacker doesn't need a username, doesn't need a password, doesn't need to trick an employee into clicking a link. They just need to find your server on the internet and send the right API request. This is one of the most dangerous enterprise vulnerabilities disclosed this year. Let me explain exactly what it does and why CISA is treating this like a 5-alarm fire. Before we get into the exploit, you need to understand what FortiClient EMS does, because it explains why this vulnerability is so catastrophic. FortiClient is Fortinet's endpoint security product. It's an antivirus, a VPN client, a compliance checker. It runs on every employee laptop and workstation in organizations that use Fortinet's security stack. FortiClient EMS is the central management server. It's the command center. IT administrators use it to push security policies, deploy software updates, monitor compliance, and manage VPN configurations across every endpoint in the organization. Think of it this way. FortiClient EMS is the one server that has trusted access to every computer in your company. It can push software to any device. It can modify security settings. It can access configuration data, including VPN credentials and certificates. If you compromise FortiClient EMS, you don't just own one server, you own the keys to every endpoint it manages. This is why Fortinet products are perennial favorites for attackers. They sit at the intersection of maximum privilege and maximum exposure. The server needs to be reachable by all managed endpoints, which often means it's exposed to the internet. And the level of access it has to managed devices makes it the single highest value target in many enterprise networks. CEPU 2026-35616 is classified as an improper access control vulnerability. Fortinet assigned it a CVSS score of 9.1, critical. Here's what that means in practice. FortiClient EMS exposes a REST API that endpoints and administrators use to communicate with the server. Certain API endpoints that should require authentication, endpoints that perform privileged operations, don't properly validate the authentication token. An attacker can craft a specific HTTP request to these API endpoints, and the server processes it as if it came from an authenticated administrator. This isn't a buffer overflow. It's not a complex memory corruption bug. It's an access control failure. The server simply doesn't check if you're allowed to do what you're asking to do. These are often the most dangerous vulnerabilities because they're reliable, they don't crash the target, and they work the same way every time on every version of the affected software. With pre-auth administrative API access, the attacker can do everything a legitimate administrator can do. They can query the server for a list of all managed endpoints and their configurations. They can extract VPN credentials and certificates stored on the server. They can push malicious software or configurations to managed endpoints. They can modify security policies to disable protections. And they can do all of this without triggering authentication failure alerts, because, from the server's perspective, the requests look legitimate. Security researchers have confirmed that exploitation is straightforward. Proof of concept code is circulating. The barrier to entry for this exploit is effectively zero for anyone with basic API knowledge. This isn't theoretical. CISA didn't add this to the KEV catalog as a precaution. They added it because they have evidence of active exploitation in the wild. The first observed exploitation dates back to March 31st, roughly a week ago. Multiple threat intelligence firms have confirmed seeing exploitation attempts targeting FortiClient EMS instances exposed to the internet. The attack pattern is consistent: automated scanning for exposed FortiClient EMS servers, followed by targeted exploitation of the API bypass.